Supreme Magus, Chapter 69, New Specializations. As soon as everyone finished eating, Lit left with the excuse of needing to prepare the final details for his first Forge Master lesson. The actual truth was that having a conversation with them about anything but magic made him want to rip his ears off. Damn. Now I remember why back on Earth I never took a babysitter's job, unless I was desperate for money. Kids are so annoying, always worried about what others think of them, obsessing themselves with the stupidest things. While he was walking towards his room, he noticed a group of 4, 1 girl and 3 boys, that had pinned another girl in a corner. Before Lit could walk away, the bullying quickly escalated in a beating. Lit never stopped walking. He just threw a glance at them, curling his upper lip in disgusted expression. Should we not help her? 4 against 1 is unfair, Solus asked. Life is unfair, Lit replied. I don't know, nor I care for her. Besides, what could I do? Even if I save her this time, as soon as I turn my back, they would beat her twice as hard for revenge. If she is so stupid to prefer getting beaten instead of taking a ballot, that's her problem. I don't plan on opening an idiot shelter. Back in his room, Lit took a long bath, discussing with Solus what they had learned from the book and how far it was safe to reveal his talent and mastery. Soon the first gong resounded, indicating that 15 minutes were left before the beginning of the next period. Lit flew all at full speed, discovering that the lesson would not take place into a classroom, but inside the Forge Mastering Training Hall, right beside the Alchemist Training Hall. When Lit landed, both the doors were still closed, and many people were waiting outside. The students were mingling together. From what he could understand, the 2 specialization courses would take place simultaneously, allowing people to meet before and after the lesson. I'm really interested in the Master Alchemist course, Solus said. I think it would be perfect complement to Forge Mastering. Who knows, maybe we could even fuse them together, obtaining powerful single-use weapons for when we are out of mana. Lit's interest was piqued. Yeah, it would be great. Too bad I can't afford another specialization. That would mark me as an S-rank student. Besides, I can't be in 2 places at once. Solus' mind shrugged. That's not a problem. Since there's 2 of us, I'll piggyback on one of the students with my shape-shifting abilities. We'll get 2 specialization for the price of 1. Wish me luck. See you later. Before Lit could stutter a surprised reply, Solus had already left his finger. She turned into a snow-white blot, using the crowd as a cover while she got under the robe of a kid with the Master Alchemist textbook in his hand. Lit was so shocked that his mind went completely blank, until the professors arrived and opened their respective doors. Lit followed inside the Forge Master Training Hall, still incredulous of Solus' sudden departure. Only the mocking laughter of one of his classmates managed to wake him from his daze. Luckily, it wasn't Lit the target, but another student that was whining about having forgotten his book. Lit immediately regained his focus. Keep calm, old man. This is just a small setback. We'll get her back in a couple of hours. Thanks to their mingling, he was still able to perceive Solus' presence in the next room. Just like her was able to keep moving since they were less than 100 meters apart. But because of the distance and the magical nature of the White Griffin Castle, they weren't able to share their minds as usual. It was like being in a crowd at a club event. They were still able to communicate but it required effort. He could perceive that Solo's mind was paying attention to something. The other lesson seemed to have already started. Hello, boys and girls. My name is Professor Laika Wainmeyer, and I will be your instructor in the path towards becoming Forge Masters. My class will be different from all others you follow, because Forge Mastering is different from any kind of magic you have ever learned. You have just moved your first step in the 7th department of the White Griffin, the crafting department. Professor Laika was a woman in her early 30s, 1 meter 65 centimeters tall, with long black hair, with shades of red held up in a scion. She was wearing skin-tight working gloves that highlighted her long and nimble fingers. She didn't have her robe on, so it was impossible to hide her soft, luscious curves. Professor Laika was better endowed than Naliar in every aspect, and despite she wore no makeup, that made her heart-shaped face stand out even more. Her demeanor was less flashy and jovial than Naliar. Her calm and composed attitude were those of a mature woman, not of an exuberant girl. Lid could empathize with his male classmates that were gulping non-stop while staring at her with dumbfounded expression. Lucky me, Lid thought. Seems that my heart is too little for more than a crush at a time. I couldn't bear acting out as an idiot again. Laika paid no attention to the agape mouths and the bright red faces. Her students were barely teenagers. She was used at their first meet reaction. So many mages are so fixed on elemental magic that they never mention the arts of crafting to their students. So I applaud you for choosing a specialization too often inglorious and underestimated, instead of making things blow up with fire and lightning like most of your peers. Contrary to what you may have heard or imagined, forge mastering doesn't require a forge, a hammer, or ingredients. Sure, some proper magic-imbued items like mana crystals or the fur of a magical beast or monster can improve the results, but that's material for another lesson. Let's start with the basics. Who of you went ahead and learned about forge mastering from our book? It was mostly a rhetorical question. The books have been delivered just the day before, and between the classes and the self-study, she wasn't expecting much. Yet a couple of hands were raised. The early bird gets the worm. Good. Describe to the class how a generic forge mastering spell works. She was pointing at a 15-year-old boy with red hair, the only one to have raised his hands besides Lid. First you need to draw a circle, and he actually had skimmed the first pages and had raised his hand to make an impression on the professor. He never expected to be questioned. Laika shook her head. So typical of teenagers, always thinking with the head in the pants first. At least this time I got only 2 posers, she thought. You, with the mean eyes, mind to step in? Lid ignored the remark, replying promptly. Forge mastering requires drawing 2 magic circles, one inscribed into the other, with a series of magical runes between them. The number and type of runes depends on the nature of the enchantment to apply. The circles must be perfectly drawn with no imperfections, and even their radius matter. It must be as close as possible to the size of the item that is going to be enchanted. Laika whistled in surprise and approval. Very well said. Where is your book, by the way? It's all in here. Lid tapped his temple with the right index finger. No way I take it out until It's in Soluspedia. I can quote it word by word, he thought. Really? The professor raised an eyebrow in disbelief. Then do you mind drawing for the class dimensional amulet circle, page 22, diagram 4? She sneered. While everyone was flipping their books, Lit closed in to Laika, who pointed to him a flask holding a pungent smell liquid. I wish Solus was here. She would be laughing like a madwoman, mocking me for my know-it-all facade. For the first time in so many years, Lit felt alone, and he didn't like that feeling. Not one bit. The room was so silent that he could listen to the steady beating of his own heart. There was no voice in his head, cheering for him or trying to make him laugh. Everything felt pointless and hollow. With a series of gestures, several drops of the liquid flew in the air thanks to water magic, splashing on several points of the perfectly smooth, white stone table between Lit and the professor. The internal and external circles took form simultaneously, one drop moving clockwise and the other counterclockwise. The innermost circle had a radius of 10 centimeters, while the other had a 15 centimeters radius, leaving about 5 centimeters between them for the runes. Only after completing both circles and checking that there were no imperfections, Lit moved the remaining drops, forming one of the 13 runes at a time, devoting all of his focus on each one. When he finished, Professor Laika clapped her hands loudly, and after a second, the class unwillingly joined her. Bravo, she said. You weren't pretending. You really studied. Sorry if I doubted you. 30 points for your performance and 10 more as an apology. I guess I should have expected as much from Manowar's and Mart's new friend. At those words, all those who were planning about revenge or how humiliating Lit without incurring in the ballot immediately took 180 degrees turn. It was already hard hiring Manowar as it was. If angered, there was no telling how he would react. Not to mention that being the royal healer, he held an enormous amount of influence and political power. He just didn't care using it. It was better not to rattle his cage. If I ask you to, would you be able to continue the explanation? Yes, Lit answered, but I hadn't the time to go much further. Plus, I don't believe I fully grasped the contents. My exposition would be lacking depth and true knowledge. The first part was a lie, just to avoid standing out too much. Reading 20 pages wasn't much, but the whole book was another story. The second part, instead, was the truth. If books were enough, anyone could get infinite specialization simply by going to the Academy's library. Humble and honest to the boot, worthy of a forge master. Another 20 points for you, Lit. Feel free to gather around here, everyone. Since your classmate has gifted us with a perfect circle, it would be wasteful not to use it. I'll give you a practical demonstration of forge mastering.